VPN at technophilespodcast.com. I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast.
Okay, because here's the thing, all right? When he said this, everyone was like, ah ha ha ha. And it's Elon Musk, so he's like, no, dude, like, I'm 100% serious.
On this episode of the Technophiles Podcast, David and Jake discuss the future of SpaceX's Falcon Heavy rocket and what it means for traveling to Mars. Hey everybody, welcome to the Technophiles Podcast. I am your host, David Geisler, and today I am joined by Jake Gill, my co-host, and he is joining us via Skype from California. Jake, how are you?
I'm doing well, David. Thanks for having me.
I can tell we have just a half a second delay here, but I'm very, very happy that you're able to be on the show. So for some of our listeners or viewers, we are going to do a very different format this season. This is the first episode of season 10, Jake, and let's see. Since season 9, you've moved to California. We had another person move to New York. I'm relocating to Chicago. The whole cast exploded, and I wasn't sure if we were going to be able to keep doing this show, but we were all talking on Slack, and we decided, you know what? Let's keep doing it, but we're just going to have to do it over the internet like this. And so I think that's how it's going to be this season. I'm okay with it. Are you feeling all right about it?
Oh, yeah. I'm super excited. Like, I think, you know, you mentioned that we were talking on Slack, and there was this void in my life. I'm like,
yes.
All this tech news, and I moved to California. I'm in the Bay Area, so I'm like surrounded by a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about. And, you know, you and I are working on a couple other projects together, and like, we just kept messaging each other. Hey, did you hear about this? Hey, did you hear about that? Oh my gosh, this is so cool looking, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, okay, we seriously have to talk about this. So
it's true. And for the longest time, I thought, well, I guess I just lost Jake. I'm going to have to find other people to sit around a table with me and talk about stuff. Because, of course, in season 9, we all sat around a couple of desks and talked about stuff. And I was very, very sad about that fact. I really was. I thought like, well, there he goes off into the ether of California.
Yeah. Right. But now we have, you know, there's 2 sets and, you know, that's OK. I think it'll work. I think it'll work well, and it's going to be super fun. And, you know, I'm glad that I still can participate in this way because I had a blast doing Technophile stuff and look forward to doing more. So.
Oh, man, I'm really pleased about it as well. And actually, because we decided that we'd kind of open the show up like this and do it, basically every single episode will be me talking to one of the cast members, and they'll be Skyping in and we'll be talking about whatever topic strikes us for that week. But because of that, it actually gave us the opportunity to bring some old cast members back into the show. Alex Sheehan, who started the show with me 8 years ago, who lives in New York, he's going to be coming back on now. We have a cast member in Chicago that I believe will be coming back. I think I've been talking to Sharif Jackson, who was just starting to do some newscasts with us, and he still lives in Milwaukee. And I think he'll be able to be on the show. And I'm even looking for even more people because since we've decided to do it online like this now, it's kind of been a little liberating. I was nervous about the delay, but I think we'll just deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a part of having a Skype conversation, you know, or talking online or whatever. Like there's a little bit of lag, and that's okay. I mean, that's just how it is. And you know, you're going to clean it up all in post anyways. We're going to sound great.
Well, one of the things that I was really proud of Technophiles is that it was, you know, 4 people really just kind of talking over each other, interrupting each other, getting ideas. But I don't think we're going to lose that energy here. So enough of the intro there. Jake, why don't I ask you to set up what we are talking about today? And just in case people haven't read the title.
Right. So,
episode.
Yeah, I mean, well, today we're talking about SpaceX. And specifically, we're going to talk about the Falcon Heavy, which is a really, really, really big rocket. And I mean, I don't want to like give too much away yet, but so we're going to talk about the Falcon Heavy, but we're also going to talk about the Falcon 9, which is kind of the predecessor to the Falcon Heavy. And because there's been some interesting SpaceX news that's been coming up, I would say maybe since like, to me, like looking back in some of our kind of chat logs, like it was around December 5th or 6th that we were kind of chatting about it because Elon Musk on Twitter was just having kind of a blast with some things, talking about kind of some of these projects and things that they're doing. And I think just kind of all of that leading up. So kind of December, January, like what has been happening with SpaceX? What are they doing? And the culmination is the Falcon Heavy. And actually, I think, when we started to put these show notes together and talk last week about how we were going to produce the show, we were like, oh yeah, we're going to have this thing, that we can talk about at the end. And unfortunately, that hasn't happened, but that's okay. We're just going to roll with it.
The impetus to this topic was that we were excited to maybe report on how the test fire went for the Falcon Heavy. Right. And as of this recording, and I think that this episode, just because it's the first episode of the season, it might come out about a week after we've been talking about this. But as of this recording, the test fire has not happened for a couple different reasons. But you have put together a couple pages of notes here. I tried to chime in where I could, and I'm really excited. I think maybe we don't waste any time, and I just kind of let you start. May I ask you to just kind of start setting this up? But for people who have listened to the show before, I love when we used to do our quick stories. That was a really good way to get everybody talking when we had everybody on the show. But since it's just going to be 2 people an episode going forward, I think we'll express the quick stories in a different way. Maybe we'll start doing the newscast again. Maybe it'll just be blog posts. But I think for these episodes, we're going to stick to a main topic here on through. Yeah. So with that said, Jake, why don't we jump in? You've got Falcon Heavy right off the top of the notes here.
I do, yeah. So basically, for those of you, for listeners who are not super following SpaceX news, the Falcon Heavy is a reusable super heavy lift rocket. I mean, this thing is massive. And ultimately, it's designed to put humans into space, and it enables missions to places like the moon or Mars in the future. So this Falcon Heavy, it's gone through a couple different names, I believe, but now it is Falcon Heavy, and it's like the rocket itself has this FH cool logo on it. So SpaceX unveiled the plan for the Falcon Heavy way back now in April 2011. And, internally, the company had been talking about something like this even before that. But they were talking about, it basically came out in a press conference. They said, hey, we're building this rocket. And the test flights at the time were estimated for 2013. Now it's 2018. Oh, yeah. It is 2018 right now, and it still hasn't done its first test flight. So
I saw that in your notes, and I couldn't help think about when we did our Mars episode last season, and we were talking about SpaceX reporting like, we're going to go to Mars by 2030. Right. And I was like, woohoo, we're going to be there. Stuff like this kind of makes me go, oh, I don't know. Hopefully 2030 for Mars. See. But anyways, nevertheless.
See. So, so this begs the question here. Why? It's 2018 right now. Why? What has taken so long? And there's a couple different things. First of all, there were some, basically all of the SpaceX engineers got pulled off of working on the Falcon Heavy project because there were 2 really unfortunate events. There were 2 Falcon 9s, which is one of their other rockets, and we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a second, but they blew up. These were, there's some crazy footage recently, and we covered this in a previous show, but we talked about this.
It was a quick story, I think in early season 9. Okay. Maybe V brought it or something. Okay. But anyway.
Well, and we also talked about this documentary about, the mockumentary, not even mockumentary, I don't know, the mission to Mars, the Mars series. So that was kind of jumping between what's happening right now that's kind of setting the tone for future Mars exploration. And this, they had a crew that was on Mars. And that was, a drama. But in that show, even they had this really, interesting part where they had this footage of people watching the Falcon 9 test flights at SpaceX, and kaboom. And, people were just devastated. So basically, because these things happened, the engineering team was like, well, we need to go through everything, and we need to figure out what the heck went wrong, because we do not want this to happen with something that is even larger. And so, they basically had to go through and do some protocol checks and say, well, try and figure it out. So that was Jake, one of the things that pushed things back. I may be mistaken,
but I think I recall that it was there were 2 explosions, and SpaceX, we learned, only had enough money for one more rocket. And if it didn't work, they were going to go out of business. Was this the Falcon 9 story, or was that?
I think one of the so. I mean, rockets? They've kind of always been on the edge. I don't know for certain. I didn't try and go too much into the finances of SpaceX and all those different things, because that's to me, that's a whole different beast.
Well, I think we talked about it on the show about a year ago, but anyway.
And so the other reality here is that, all right, April 2011, Falcon Heavy, we're going to launch this thing in 2013. Well, that was a very optimistic kind of schedule. And the reality, and this was from Elon Musk himself and from a lot of the people at SpaceX, they're like, okay, making a rocket this large is like, it is not as easy as we thought it was. Like they were a bit naive in thinking that they could just do this. And so those are the two large contributing factors to why it's 2018 and we haven't seen a launch of this thing yet. But so that's kind of where we're at. And, at this point, we are getting ready. They're talking about doing a test fire of the rockets. But so I kind of want to back things off a little bit, though, and talk a little bit about the Falcon 9, because,
yeah, sure.
That kind of sets the stage a little bit. So looking at our notes here, like Falcon 9, what is that? That's kind of a good place to start. So let's do it, because the Heavy is like versions of 9s mixed together too. Right, exactly. So the Falcon 9 is, this is also quite a large rocket, and it's essentially designed for low Earth orbit launches. So right now it's been delivering, the Dragon capsules, which they haven't done manned crews yet. So no astronauts have gone in the Dragon up to the space station. Right? But Falcon Heavy the Falcon 9 has been used for lots of satellite launches. It's taking supplies up to the International Space Station. And as of kind of right now, 47 Falcon 9 rockets. They've had 47 launches, which that number is a lot higher than I thought it was. I lost track. And 13 resupply missions to the International Space Station. Which is super cool. And I think probably the coolest thing about this, the Falcon 9 and just SpaceX in general, is the fact that when these rockets go up, like the olden days, they were gone. There was no more rocket anymore. Everything was out into space or, kind of burned back up in reentry. Not these. So these things have successfully now quite a few times come down and they land on a drone ship out in the middle of, depending on where they launch from, they like shoot this drone ship all around the world. And it basically goes up, releases its payload, and then comes back down and lands on the drone ship. And they like a little rocket segue. and they can fill it back up and reuse it. And they've done this. I think one of the last missions earlier in the month, they sent up, and it was both a reusable Dragon capsule and the rocket itself. And both of them are reusable. And so really I think the kind of brilliance of SpaceX and why it's so interesting is, well, first of all, it's not a government space company. It's not NASA or anything like this. This is a totally private firm. And we have reusability, which is reducing cost and making it cheaper and cheaper to get up to space. It reduces cost by like 75%. It's crazy. I think. And it makes it's all about how much cost per pound to get things up into space. And the lower and lower we get that number, the more accessible space is to humanity, basically. So, SpaceX is so cool to watch, and these launches are pretty amazing. What, if I may, real quick, one of the things that was exciting about the shuttle program in the 80s and the 90s was the reusability. Right. And the joke was they were just making a space bus, and they wanted to use things that could go up and down and up and down and up and down. And back then we didn't have. I make the joke about the Segway, but like the accelerometers and self-balancing robots and self-aware sensors and things with gravity and knowing if something's balanced or not, that stuff wasn't around back then. So the only way we could make something, we being NASA at the time, make something reusable was to make it an airplane, make it, use to land. To land like a glider, basically. Right. Now that we have these rockets that can maintain their balance and put themselves back down like a massive ballerina or something like that, that's really what has made this possible. Well, it gives me goosebumps every single time I watch these videos. I follow SpaceX and Elon Musk and stuff on social media. And anytime that there's any of these things, they're on it and they're reporting on it, and rightfully so, because it's so cool to watch. It's just like, I remember it's so fun. Offline or off air, I guess, online, but off air, you and I spoke a few weeks ago. We were joking a little bit about like watching a rocket land. If you're not careful, you almost think you're watching a takeoff in reverse because it's so smooth and so beautiful. Right. Yeah, it's so good. So yeah, and actually, So that's basically the kind of the premise of the Falcon 9. So this is like the main rocket that SpaceX uses for low Earth orbit deliveries. They're doing satellites. They're going to ISS. They're hoping to put astronauts in the Dragon capsule and use that and deliver people up to the International Space Station. So again, kind of leading up to the Falcon Heavy here, December 22nd, which was a Friday night. Kind of speaking of social media and stuff, SpaceX launched a Falcon 9 from Vandenberg Air Force Base, which is in Southern California. And they did this at night. And so the sun was setting and the rocket expelled like plume. The rocket plume was just like, it was remarkable. And it looked like this like whale in the sky really, I think like if you are listening, stop for a moment, Google it. And get a look at these images.
I'm showing it right now in the video episode.
Yeah, it was amazing, but it was so funny because this was over LA and like they don't see this very often.
Yeah, not a lot of launches over there.
Florida, I think people in Florida would be like, whatever.
Like,
you know what I mean?
Another thing.
It's pretty, but I think they'd know what's going on. But like people in LA were kind of freaking out. And Elon Musk's tweet did not help. So like after it happened, he's like, it's a nuclear alien UFO from North Korea. And like, with everything that's been going on in the news lately, there has been some government, basically some people from the Pentagon and things that have kind of quit their job and they've said, hey, look, we have these videos of these unidentified objects that we don't understand. They're doing things that our ships can't do. And so that was like kind of end of December. You have this like UFO fever going on a little bit. And then,
it just got real for a second.
You have North Korea, which has been doing some missile testing and remains kind of adamant that this is the path that they want to go. So anyways, he tweets this out, but like, people on the freeway were stopping their cars. You have celebrities like tweeting out like, hey, seriously, people, what the heck am I looking at? Like, I have no idea. And it took a little while for people to kind of realize that this was a rocket plume from a Falcon Heavy. But like,
because it does look unique.
It does. It looks very unique. And so they did, I think it was 9 satellites got launched from this thing. So yeah, caused some traffic jams, some great tweets and some truly amazing photos and videos of the whole thing. And, for the people of LA, that area, I think it got a lot more people kind of looking up and thinking about space. And so that was super exciting. So yeah, there was that happened. And then, so if we fast forward just a little bit more, and now we're into January, but on January 7th, Falcon 9 did another launch. But this one was for like Zuma. And this was like classified. Basically,
what's Zuma? I don't know what that is actually.
So Zuma this was a spy satellite, and SpaceX has a contract with the Air Force and with the government, and so they were like, yeah, we're gonna put this thing up into orbit. So on January 7th, Falcon 9 carrying the classified Zuma payload launched. Hours later, it was declared dead in orbit, and this thing cost about $1 billion of taxpayer dollars. So, as you suspect, when anything this much, when something goes wrong, right? And, if we look back here, Falcon Heavy was delayed because of some of these Falcon 9s blowing up. And so, these investigations happen. Anytime anything goes wrong, a good company is going to stop and say, hey, we need to kind of check on this. So there's a lot of investigations going on, but SpaceX isn't the only company working on this project. So we have
dead in orbit. What may we infer from that? Dead in orbit means it's still up there, or is it missing?
So it's really hard to say. I mean, because it's a classified program, like we're not getting very much. There have been some inquiries. There's been some hearings going on. SpaceX has said our rocket has done everything it performed its service. It put it up there. We released the thing, the rocket came back, like everything was good from the Falcon 9 perspective.
For me, dead in orbit means that it's up there, but it's not active.
Or it might have been. So this was kind of hours later. And this was, a lot of this stuff, like I said, this is from various news sources. I've been trying to kind of stitch together a little bit of what happened here. But what might have happened is that it was in orbit for maybe like one rotation, but then it didn't stay in orbit. So it might have burned up on end. I don't know. So, but basically, like I said, so Falcon, SpaceX was not the only company to work on this. So Northrop Grumman also was in on this project, and they provided the mating adapter, the adapter that mates the Zuma satellite to the Falcon 9. Okay. So if during this delivery out into orbit, if that failed, then maybe they're responsible. And they're like, we're not talking about it, classified, no comment to the public, basically. So there's a lot of rumors that are kind of flying around about this. And so kind of digging in here to some stuff, there's this great article on Wired, and that was where I got a lot of this information. So we'll have that in the show notes.
We have a link to it in our show notes. Sorry, pardon me.
Yeah, so some amateur astronomers and satellite trackers, which I mean, it's so cool that people do this. I marvel.
So it reminds me of like train watchers and stuff like that.
Right, and it's like, man, we live in such interesting times. So a lot of them were saying, they were like, yeah, we saw, everything looked good from their amateur kind of observation of things. And so that just kind of like fuels these additional rumors. And I don't want to overly speculate on anything, but in the Wired article, there was a mention that it was not this. If it actually is, it's very possible that it is actually up there doing its thing.
And maybe they need to front
that the
a little
government
bit.
has certainly misled the public about sensitive mission data in the past.
Well, it's a spy satellite. The best way to get your cover is say, oops, it's not
but
up there.
But it's not
even.
like you can pretend like it's not going up, right? Because it's a freaking rocket, and people are, you have
That's what
amateurs and they have to launch it, and people are going to see it. And if it's at night and there's a nice plume, then the freeway is going to get shut down. So it's like, yeah, we're doing this thing. It's called Zuma, and then they're like, yeah, it's lost in orbit. And so honestly, who the heck knows? But
I feel like it's more that, to be honest. But anyway, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard to say. So actually, as of this morning, I found an update. I was doing a little bit more digging. And basically, Lieutenant General John Thompson, who's command center for the Space and Missile Systems Center from the Air Force, they told Bloomberg News, like, based on the data available, our team did not identify any information that would change SpaceX Falcon 9's certification status. So basically what this means is the Air Force is saying, hey, look, we've contracted SpaceX to do some stuff for us, launching satellites, whatever. That hasn't changed based on what our investigation right now. And they got this contract in 2015. And I don't know when it goes till. But this is all interesting stuff. And actually, this was my middle point, but now I'm going to make it my last point. But like, we'll
probably go to break after this.
There is a ton of money in launching government payloads. It's a huge industry. It's worth a ton of money, like billions and billions and billions of dollars. And SpaceX actually sued for the right to bid on military contracts back in 2014, and they got the contract in 2015. So they were challenging a Lockheed Boeing outfit that basically had a monopoly on it for many, many, many years. And SpaceX said,
SpaceX and Boeing are competitors.
They are very much competitors. So they're like, hey, look, we can do this too. Maybe they can underbid Boeing, Lockheed Boeing. And so they got the right to do it. And so these contracts are, I think I read somewhere, something like $70 billion through 2030. And so if you're a company that's trying to fund private ventures to Mars, like, you got to pay for it. And delivering government payloads,
be the government's pack mule for a little bit. That's
is
all
probably
right.
a very great way to do this. So maintaining certification status, being able to launch often and regularly and have trust of the government so that you can keep, basically writing paychecks for people that are working on these programs is incredibly important. That's an update from January 23rd. Who knows? I mean, I don't really know how much more we're going to get about the Zuma mission. It seems like SpaceX is continuously saying, hey, look, our program, our rocket did its job. And no one's trying to place, I don't know. It's hard to say because it's a classified mission.
It's kind of funny because it seems like everybody's saying like, well, everything worked fine. Everyone individually saying they're fine, we're fine, they're fine, we're fine.
To me, that adds to the rumor mill, David, and that makes it more exciting. Like,
it's
hey,
like,
man,
it's like taking a handy cam.
Maybe it is
like
up
coming
there.
to a party, going, oh shucks, my handy cam's broken, and then setting it down and pushing record, and then getting evidence of debauchery or who knows what.
Who knows? So I don't know if you guys if you guys think that this thing is up there, let's chat about it or whatever on Twitter. But like, I'm just reporting what I see. It seems interesting. But it was one of these things. This is all
technically still Falcon 9. Oh man,
this is still Falcon 9.
There's that delay hitting us up. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's still Falcon 9, and like again, this was in the last month. So a lot of things kind of been happening. Some SpaceX has been in the news a lot recently, basically.
Right.
So
we just capped off with Falcon 9. We're going to go to break. You can tweet us at Technophiles Pod if you have anything to say about what we have already talked about or are about to talk about. Jake, we're just going to take a super quick break here and come back. And I see it looks like we're going to dive in deep with Falcon Heavy information.
Yeah, we'll go back into the Falcon Heavy. You have a lot of great notes in here. It looks like
a little less conspiracy in the second half of this episode.
A little bit less.
But that was it. But that's cool. I'll see you in a little bit, all right?
Sounds good.
They say that someday the human race will go to Mars. But how we'll get there seems to be up for debate. The Falcon Heavy seems to be the leader in that category. But when will the test fire happen? We'll just have to wait. It's not like the Falcon Heavy will be the first to fly, but it's the strongest since the Saturn V. But Falcon 9 has already supplied the ISS, you see. 47 times it put stuff in our skies. Star Wars, this is just like Star Wars, except without those wars. I guess it's just stars. Well, actually, that's still pretty cool to me, because now we can see how we'll fly to Mars.
From TPN at Technophilespodcast.com, I'm David Geisler, and this is the Technophiles Podcast. Okay, we are back from the break. I am David Geisler here with Mr. Jake Gill. Jake is joining us from California right now. My co-host Skyping in.
Yes, I am.
It's
just like the first part of this episode.
So I'm laughing right now because I just realized in the olden days when you come back from a break, you say that stuff because it's like someone else might walk into the room because it's radio or television. This is a podcast. This is a YouTube video. People aren't doing that.
It would be really funny if there was a different co-host, though, for the second part.
Yeah. Wait, what did I miss? All I saw was an ad for a purple mattress. Now all of a sudden it's a different co-host.
Yeah.
All right. Hey, Jake, let's do this. Falcon Heavy.
Yep. So, actually, okay, to start with the Falcon Heavy, we have to go back in time again. Like I said, this has been SpaceX, Elon Musk, all these things. I mean, they're always in the news because they're doing such cool stuff. But the thing that got me so interested in the beginning was on December 1st on Twitter. Elon Musk says,
right,
payload will be my midnight cherry Tesla Roadster playing Space Odyssey. Destination is Mars orbit. We'll be in deep space for 1 billion years or so if it doesn't blow up on ascent.
So I remember being in a meeting with you, a Google Hangout meeting for a different reason. And you were like, did you see the news today? I was like, what are you talking about? You were like peeing your pants. You're so excited.
Dude,
and I get it too. I think it's hysterical.
Okay. Because here's the thing. All right. When he said this, everyone was like, ah, ha, ha, ha.
Mm-hmm.
And it's Elon Musk. So he's like, no, dude, like I'm 100% serious.
So to clarify, usually a test payload is just dead weight, literally cement blocks, sometimes just a bunch of garbage.
Okay. Yeah. Let me back up a little bit. It wasn't even that people were like, ha, ha, ha. There were people that were legitimately like, why are you doing this? This is so dumb. Right. Why don't you send scientific instruments or something, like do something useful rather than send your Tesla Roadster,
your favorite car,
in for some publicity stunt, right? And so, but like exactly like you said, David, the reality is that most of the time, like it's a maiden voyage of a rocket that has never lifted off ever before. There are no expectations. And when these things happen historically for any other rocket, like you said, the payload, you want to have some weight in there because you need to make sure that things are right. And so they just put concrete or whatever in. And so, this guy owns SpaceX is a private company. They can do what they want. And how cool is it to think that his other project, Tesla, his Roadster is going to play Space Oddity, which is a great song.
Sure.
And just be out there forever. So we were kind of joking. We're like, aliens are going to find this thing and they're going to like.
There were some follow-up reply tweets to his tweet too. And he basically replied to those tweets by saying, someone asked like, oh, is there going to be a towel in the glove box? And he said, absolutely. And it's going to say, don't panic. And like, he was really going all the way with it.
He's having a blast.
Some people think that this is a broad stroke of ego. I choose that he's having a bit of a sense of humor about it all.
I think he is. And honestly, like seeing,
so then, lost you.
Yeah. And then, delays.
Seeing what?
Well, so a couple days,
right now, but it's okay.
Yeah. I mean, like a couple weeks later, he put, the pictures up and he shared them. And it was like, sure enough, anyone that thought he was kidding was silenced instantly because there it is, like loaded into the capsule.
And that car is not just sitting in there. It is like mounted in a glorious trophy fashion. And it looks like it's ready to go out into the universe. And I don't know. It is definitely a stroke of expression. Maybe not logistics, but I'm for it.
Yeah, me too. I love it. Like, come on. If we're going to have an eccentric billionaire who's trying to get us to Mars, like, why wouldn't it be a car strapped to a bunch of rockets? So the plan is to put this thing into heliocentric orbit. So it will go up if things work. Like he said, this could, as long as it makes it up, then it would burn. They would burn and it would basically get into a similar orbit as Mars. So it would go around the sun and it would be out there forever, basically.
Until we have the technology to go get it and put it in a museum somewhere.
Someone's going to go get that thing if they can.
Yep. A couple thousand years from now, it's going to be in a museum.
Probably. So if we're going back in time again, so in December 1st, that kind of that came out, that tweet came out. Since then, so on January 4th, so now we're into 2018 again. Right. Just we're kind of jumping all around here, but the Falcon Heavy went vertical. So it is in Florida. It's at Cape Canaveral, and it's on launch pad 39A, which has been leased by SpaceX.
Yes, and I think that's the same launch pad that shot the Saturn V off, right?
Yep. So it was built, the entire complex, this whole area, 39A and a few other things, they were all built for the Apollo program that put humanity on the moon. So this is it's really cool that they are leasing this and, they launch Falcon 9 and Falcon Heavy and, Falcon Heavy is supposed to get us to Mars. So, I mean, it's like, there's quite an homage to the things that we have done historically as humans venturing toward the stars. So
I saw a stat the other day that said that the Falcon Heavy is as strong as the Saturn V, but it weighs half as much. And it's actually a bit smaller, too, I think. So to say as strong, I'm not sure if that means its ultimate thrust because it's smaller.
I thought it was actually about double what.
Yeah. Isn't that what I was? What did I say? The same?
You said about as strong. I think it's 2x.
It might be. So it might be 2x because I know it's half the size or half the weight of a Saturn V. So maybe it gets 2x output. Maybe the rockets themselves are the same as Saturn V, but because it weighs half as much.
That would be a really good thing to have in the show notes, but unfortunately. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's.
I thought I put him in there. I thought I put him in there.
No, we have some other stuff in here. So, but yeah, so it's January 4th. They put it up, and there was a really cool video of this thing getting standing. It got everyone really excited again because they're like, "Hey, we're getting ready." And so, but for any rocket launch like this, like the Falcon 9, now 47 launches, they've done them. Things are pretty smooth sailing at this point. They look for a good launch window, they fill things up, they get ready, and they go. And we enjoy it. Humans, we like watching the launches, but like there's nothing new here. But the Falcon Heavy, being a new
47 launches within the past couple of years is easily one a month, if not more.
Yeah.
Well, no, it is. Yeah. Anyway.
So they're like everything is kind of, it's got the green light kind of almost always. They trust the thing, they've gone through after the explosions and they made some technical, improvements and ensured that this doesn't happen regularly. But with the Falcon Heavy, it being so new, kind of every stage of this process is quite frankly, it's newsworthy because this is such a big thing. So now it went vertical and they made sure that everything could get test fitted. So that was done. And then they started working on making sure that all the parts work. And kind of right now, what we're waiting for is a test fire of the 27 Merlin rockets, engines that this thing has. And basically, as you're going to talk, so I'm going to kick it over to you to talk about this a little bit more in a second. But
okay.
These are basically what this thing is. If you look at a picture, this is like 3 Falcon 9s that are kind of combined together.
Exactly. A Falcon 9 itself is like 6 or 7 of the Merlin rockets all clumped together and aimed. And they basically took 2 side 9s, smacked them on there, and they use those as almost like the main boosters that you would see back in the shuttle program. Those big, I've just bumped my mic. The big white ones that would be on the edge of a shuttle. Mm-hmm. The difference is instead of just falling down to earth or maybe parachuting down, they're going to land themselves, which is very exciting.
So all 3 will land.
Yes. The two outside ones will land first, and they will land, I think, just on the ground somewhere. And then the main one is the one that lands on the drone ship. Isn't that right?
Yep. So, yeah. But everything has been leading up. They've been talking about the tests, right? But each time they're getting postponed and postponed and postponed. So twice now it's been postponed due to logistical and safety concerns for them doing the test fires. And then, recently they filled it up with fuel and everything looked okay. And then like the worst postponement of them all. So we were really excited because David and I were like, oh yeah, last Friday.
To the point where when we were going over our show notes last week, we were sure that it would happen by the time we did this episode. We were worried that it had happened already, maybe.
Yeah. Well, and we were like, oh no, is this thing going to launch before our episode comes out? Because that would be interesting. I mean, it would be fine. But so now the last postponement was as of like the 21st, and things are back in order, guys. So don't mean everyone, but the government shutdown in America, the fact that Congress and the president and no one could sign this bill to keep things up and running, delayed the test fire even further. So what happened? Now you might be thinking SpaceX is a private company. What the heck? But the shutdown removed key members of the civilian workforce that would be working on the static test fire tests. And that's because, again, SpaceX is leasing 39A from the government. From NASA, basically. And so they weren't able to do it. And the plan is to do this is to examine data from 12-second firing of the 27 Merlin engines before giving it the all clear. And yeah, that hasn't happened yet so it was like delays. And then they were like, we're ready, we're going to go. And then the government could not reach an agreement. Boom. And science kind of all over America stopped. Like NASA has a tweet out that said basically like, hey, we're not coming into work. So until we, get the green light to work again. We can't reply to things. We're not doing anything, obviously there are some people, probably key people that are still making sure people are okay up at the ISS and everything.
Right.
But most of the people that are working on government contracts have not been working. And as of, I think yesterday, things were kind of resolved. They basically, not to get into too much politics, but they're going to keep the doors open for another month, and hopefully they can come to some agreement about how they're going to spend their money. And
yesterday was January 22nd.
Correct. Yeah. So, I really wish that we could talk about
it's a little weird over there
itself, but
at NASA, because they have all these old buildings from when NASA had all of their projects. NASA's focusing on other stuff right now. They're kind of focusing on Mars as well, actually, and doing some other things. But they have all these empty, we'll just say, buildings sitting around. And I know that Boeing leases one or two of them. Mm-hmm. SpaceX leases one or two. And there's another company that leases one or two. And so it's awkward. It's like going back to school a little bit. Everybody's kind of in it for the same reasons, but they're competitors and they're only not even miles away from each other. But nevertheless,
right.
All of those buildings NASA's making a lot of money leasing those buildings out to these companies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so at the end of the day, even though SpaceX is private, like you said, I'm repeating you, but the people that are there providing the service weren't able to be there.
Yeah.
Man, that's scary if you're up in the ISS. That is terrifying. There's got to be some logistics or that's almost an emergency,
I would assume that, you would hope that someone's like, dude, it's not about the money. I'm coming into work today, right?
To keep these people alive out on that ship.
Yeah. So, and I'm sure everyone at SpaceX is like, oh my gosh, we've been waiting, 2011, we announced this thing. We've delayed it so many times. Now we're into 2018. We just want to see these engines go and give ourselves the green light so that we can launch this thing.
I just saw in your notes that the two side boosters are going to land back at Cape Canaveral. I didn't know. I knew they were going to land on the ground. I didn't know that they were coming all the way back. Duh, of course. That's so smart.
Yeah.
They just come home. They're like drone rockets.
Exactly. So so the two side rockets will come home, and then the other, the middle one, will go to their drone ship, which is named, of course, I Still Love You.
Yep. And that's basically just like a robot barge that's out there.
Which is super cool. And so, they just send it to where it needs to go. And then some minor increments as the rocket is coming back down to kind of adjust for things. But they land this thing on a barge ship and then bring it back into port, which is super cool. So, right. Just a little bit more then about the Falcon Heavy. So, we have essentially it's 3 Falcon 9 rocket cores that are together, and then they use some scaffolding and things to hold them and keep everything in place. It is 70 meters tall, which is massive. And the 3 rocket cores, they're using this Merlin 1D engine, 9 each on each of them. And then together, it can carry 60 tons into low Earth orbit. Which no rocket has done since Saturn V, which is the moon rocket, like you said. I think
I have an asset here of
twice as much.
I think I have an asset here of some workers working at the base of one of the rockets, and it really shows you just how big they are.
Oh, it's crazy.
On the video version, I'm putting it up. Maybe I can, unfortunately, it might be the only way you can see it, but nevertheless.
Basically it's these 3 things. And then on top of the center one, that will be where the single upper stage is. And so on top of that, there's a little pod in the middle, and that it basically breaks away, and then your Dragon capsule or whatever you have in there would come out. And
that's kind of the payload territory. And
right.
I understand that they're trying to design that payload so that it's completely compatible with the larger rocket that they're planning to make for the big Mars trip. And I forget the name of that rocket right now. The big one that we talked about a few episodes ago.
I was under the impression that
Mars one?
It's the Falcon Heavy.
It's not. It's like a Dragon XXX or something like that. It's the one that's not even made yet. But anyway.
Oh.
SpaceX, I'm sorry, I don't have this in the notes right now, but SpaceX, they released a video about a year ago of the massive rocket that would go up, detach, then the payload would stay in orbit. The main rocket would come back down. The payload would connect to an additional rocket, and then that big rocket would shoot up to Mars. Do you remember us talking about this a little bit about a year ago? I'm going to do some on-show Googling right now.
But I was under the impression that they were going to be using the Falcon Heavy, and then basically the center payload would go into orbit and wait, and then they would send another.
No, the BFR. It's the BFR, I think. I'm serious. I'm just Googling it live right now. But there's the payload that's going to be the spaceship, essentially, they're trying to have that be very similar and almost compatible. And they're testing it out on the Falcon Heavy right now.
So I don't see it. I don't see it on SpaceX's website, which is interesting.
Yep. We will call that gossip right now because I didn't have it in the show notes.
I apologize. Anyway. I was under the impression that the Falcon Heavy was going to be the one.
Maybe it is, and maybe I'm just talking.
I see. Because there's been a lot of name changes that have been happening. It could have been that the Falcon Heavy was originally the BFR, which is the big freaking rocket.
So I'm finding some charts online right now. I apologize. We're doing this right on the show, but I'm finding some charts right now that are just calling it the Mars vehicle, but whatever.
Okay.
It's definitely aesthetically not a Falcon Heavy.
Got it.
The rocket itself.
Okay.
We can follow up on this on Twitter after the show. I don't want to waste too much time on it. But anyway, yeah, this is absolutely, regardless of the specific logistics, the Falcon Heavy is the next step into creating the final step, which would be actual missions to Mars and things like that.
And basically, right. And so what the Falcon Heavy enables here. So if it's not getting to people to Mars, that's okay. It's still super important because you'll basically, if you look at a Falcon 9, the performance, it can handle about 23,000 kilograms, so about 50,000+ pounds worth of supplies, things, whatever they're putting in. The payload could be about 50,000 pounds to low Earth orbit. I don't know why that is so hard for me to say. LEO. Whereas the Falcon Heavy is 144,000 pounds or about 64,000 kilograms. And this is all from SpaceX.com capabilities, their webpage, which is really interesting because this is a business. So I was like poking around doing some notes, right? And they have the standard payment plan. So it costs $62 million to launch a Falcon 9. And it's $90 million to launch a Falcon Heavy. So if you are a super rich listener and you want to, do something crazy to rival Elon Musk's, car or whatever, it's only $90 million to do a Falcon Heavy.
So while you were talking about that, I pulled up a chart here, and we have the Falcon 9. Then there was like a phase 2 of the Falcon 9, then a Falcon 9 Heavy, which is what we're talking about. And then there's talk about the Falcon X, and then a Falcon X Heavy, and then a Falcon XX. And apparently that's some of the future plans of things.
Okay, got it.
But right now we're on we're on like 9 Heavy, but the name has changed a little bit. Yeah,
and so actually looking looking at these rockets here, the Falcon Heavy does have in their destination kind of brochure, let's call it, they do have the option to take payloads to Mars with this thing. But the further and further you get away from Earth, the less payload capacity any one of these rockets has. So Falcon 9 could theoretically get some payload to Mars, but you're looking at about 4,000 kilograms, about 8,800 pounds. Whereas with Falcon Heavy for Mars, that essentially like doubles. Like triples. So you have like almost 17,000 kilograms or about 40,000 pounds worth of payload that you could take. So, again, we're talking about a rocket here that is, 3x the power, 3x the thrust, 3x rockets, and it's gonna be wild. Unfortunately, it hasn't test fired yet, and we don't know when it's gonna launch. They originally, I think it was like end of January, and obviously because they haven't test fired yet, then that's gonna get delayed a little bit.
I was going to ask you, people who are listening to this right now that might be interested in kind of following up on this after this episode posts, what are ways, in your opinion, that they would be able to do that?
I mean, honestly, if you type in SpaceX Falcon Heavy into Google and sort by news or any of your search browsers, it's going to come up. You can follow, you could also follow SpaceX or Elon Musk on Twitter. I guarantee you they're going to be talking about it. It'll be really interesting. I think it would be cool, David, if we could kind of tweet out once we have some information about when the, launch window is scheduled for.
I think we will.
Because, even Elon Musk, Like no one's sure what's going to happen here. And so he was like, hey, you know what? It's going to be a heck of a show either way. This thing is either going to go into orbit or it's going to blow up. And that will be pretty spectacular too.
Yeah, we might do a follow-up. You're absolutely right. And we'll certainly continue following up on our Twitter account. And I don't know. This is behind the curtain stuff here, but maybe I'll just give you access to our Twitter. So you're welcome to tweet out of it as well. However, I was thinking about, oh shoot, I lost my train of thought. Oh well. Following the rocket, doing the follow-up. Oh yes, I remember what I was going to ask. Pardon me and thank you. Is there a date set right now? Like, because there was a date and then a postponement. Right now. Is it really seriously just up in the air? We don't know when a launch or a test fire might happen.
Well, no, we don't, because so it was originally scheduled for this past Friday, and then government shutdown.
Yep.
So now when I looked this morning before doing this recording, I didn't have
January 23rd.
Yeah, I didn't have a definitive date of when they were going to do the test fire.
I see.
So, it could happen before we post this, which would be cool. But yeah, I mean, it's welcome to the entire story arc of the Falcon Heavy, which has just been delay. And that's okay.
I mean, it is. It's when, sometimes when people do make these predictions about, Google says 5 years ago, they said, we're going to have driving cars in 10 years and they're a little ahead of schedule. And then another company says, we're going to have talking robots in 2 years. And then they get a little behind schedule. I guess that's just kind of the ebb and flow of technology. There's a lot of like logistic reasons why these things, there's not a lot of unknowns, I think, happening here with the story of the Falcon Heavy.
Right.
There are we know why there have been delays nevertheless. But I think it's really exciting. I think this is an exciting time because this is the first, not since the Saturn V has anybody even bothered to make a rocket this strong, you could say.
And not only is it, incredibly powerful, but the three components are going to come back down. It's opening up these just larger missions. It's all very exciting. Really just, I feel like SpaceX probably gets the most news just because it's fun to talk about Elon Musk. I mean,
it's fun to talk about Elon Musk because he throws cars in his rockets as payloads.
Exactly, because he tweets about it and he's engaging. And I mean, there's but really, I mean, this is just one element of the privatized space exploration. But it's a really big element. And so it's been exciting to kind of see. And
there's three main companies that are doing private space stuff right now. It's Boeing and SpaceX, and then another one that is it Lockheed? No, that might be Boeing. Anyway, I think this is really exciting what SpaceX is doing because I was talking to a couple friends about this show after you and I had our meeting last week, and I was saying the thing that's so cool about these rockets is that the story with SpaceX is not simply more rockets, stronger rockets. SpaceX at least has been rethinking how a rocket could work. And it's a culmination of multiple technologies. So some of the accelerometers in our Wiimotes, there's an extension of that's helping these rockets do certain things and keep their balance and stuff like that. And the artificial intelligence that's being used in autonomous driving, some of that type of those styles of algorithms are being applied to these rockets. And it's just a really cool example of what science can do when certain technologies come together and create an exponentially greater thing. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, one company that just joined the conversation actually is a company called Rocket Lab. And they rocketlabUSA.com, US and New Zealand, but they launched January 21st.
January 21st of this year, huh?
Yeah, they just launched. So I'm just looking on their Twitter right now because I wasn't sure of the name, but liftoff from Rocket Lab launch Complex 1. Space is open for business. And the hashtag is still testing. And I actually think that their rocket might have been called still testing, which is pretty cool. So it's funny. Just wild. I mean, I don't know.
Maybe we do a follow-up on them like 6 months from now, just see if they're doing
something. I feel like, with just the fact that the Technophile. I mean, we can't ignore what's happening with space. So it's always exciting to kind of check in and talk about and, work on. We're definitely you and I think particularly are a little bit Elon Musk fanboys sometimes, and
sometimes,
yeah, he's like the real life Tony Stark. That's okay.
The thing that I like about Elon the most is, and the things that he represents is that it really is what I just spoke to a minute ago, is that he's one of those guys that likes to bring multiple technologies together to make a stronger technology. Mm-hmm.
And he's not willing to take risks. And he's, like I said, we will see what happens. Hopefully the test fire goes well. I think people are pretty optimistic about it, but you want the green light. And then after that, really, it's like ... Who the heck knows? Like he said, it's going to be a big show one way or the other. It's either going to go up and be cool, or it's going to go boom. And that'll be exciting too, I suppose.
We'll see. Perhaps on Twitter, we can do like a quick little live episode when it launches, the evening of or something like that, Jake. But for now, people can find you on Twitter or other kinds of social media by searching you're Critical Owl on Twitter still, I think.
I am still at Critical Owl. I have not changed that at all.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Any other places you want people to find you, or is that good enough?
No, Twitter's good.
People can find me on Twitter at Raptor Paint. That's probably good enough for me as well. People can always tweet the show at Technophiles Pod if they have anything to say about what we've been discussing. If they think we're fanboys too much or not enough, or there's other people that are doing really interesting things as well, please tweet it to us. Use at Technophiles Pod. That is our handle. You can also actually, I have a little sister show that I'm doing right now. A sibling show, I should say, more accurately. It's about Zelda, and we actually get a lot of comments on our Facebook page, so I might start inviting our Technophiles audience to do that as well. If you're listening to this episode or watching this episode on YouTube or on Facebook, please just throw your comments, throw your stuff right down in the comments. We'll check them. You don't have to use Twitter if you don't want, but if you're listening on iTunes or Google Play or something right now and you are so inclined, to message us at Technophiles Pod. Thank you, everybody. Jake, thank you. I think this was okay. We kind of got the training wheels on here a little bit with this new format, but I think it worked out all right. Well, if everything goes well, I think next week I'm meeting with Alex Sheehan. That might change, and I'm not sure what we're talking about yet, but that'll be very exciting. And Jake, you and I will certainly be talking again in a couple weeks. Yeah, we'll be hanging out. I think this should work quite well, and it's been fun. So I'm happy to Skype in from California. Nice. It's nice to chat again. All right, cool, dude. I think let's get out of here. Have a good day. We'll see y'all next week on Technophiles.